Constantine the Great was born the 27th February 272 AD as Flavius Valerius Constantinus. He was the son of Constantius I Chlorus and was with him when Constantius died on campaign near York. He would bring down his troops and claim the throne along with Maxentius to overthrow Severus II. After he did this, Constantine would get Hispania, Gaul, and Britannia, while Maxentius got Italy and North Africa, although for a lot of this, Maxentius was putting down a revolt by Domitius Alexander. So, let's talk about his campaigns against barbarians. He had many of these. He would campaign against the Franks and the Alemanni between 306 and 308, and 313 to 314, the Goths in 332, and the Sarmatians in 334. This would be very good for the empire and would overall stabilize the borders. Along with Diocletian, this really helped set up the 4th century for his successors. So let's talk about one of the first things that Constantine did. He fought a civil war with Maxentius. He would fight the Battle of Milvian Bridge, which would be very important to Christianity because apparently Constantine got a vision from God to put the Cairo, a Christian symbol, on his shields. After he did this, he won the battle and Maxentius died, and he inherited Italy and North Africa. This would be followed by the damnation of Maxentius, and this would stabilize the West for Constantine as he had no other rivals, and this left the East divided between Licinius and Maximinus Daza. So let's talk about Licinius. Licinius, born Valerius Licinianus Licinius. He was born in 265 AD, so a little older than Constantine, and would be called on by Diocletian to roll over part of the East due to all of the destabilization of the East, and among other things. So let's talk about one of the things that Licinius did, and that was fight a civil war with Maximinus Daza. This would be successful as Licinius would win at the Battle of Tzaralam and would wholly incorporate the East in his realm. And this would lead to the division of the West between Constantine and the East between Licinius. But over time, both of these people had more destabilization and they had deteriorating relations. So they fought another civil war where Licinius would lose at the Battle of Sibyllane, Mardia, and they would eventually reach a settlement where they would have their sons be elevated to the rank of Caesar, and they would both inherit. But as you can see from the map, when Constantine took over part of Greece, this would not last for long, as Constantine would raise tensions again, claiming that he was fighting barbarians, and would also defeat him at the Battle of Adrianople, the Hellespont, and Chrysopolis. After this, Licinius would also appoint two Caesars to him, Valerius Valens, which was before the settlement, and Martinian, which was after the settlement. After he would lose these battles, he would eventually be caught, and him and his son Licinius II would be executed by Constantine, which would be quite a brutal move. That would be the end of Licinius, and the empire would be reunited under Constantine, and this would be the end of the Tetrarchy. So let's talk about the Edict of Milan. This document ended the Diocletianic persecution and legalized Christianity. Co-authored by Constantine and Licinius, this would be a very important landmark for Christianity. So now that Christianity was legalized, Christianity would be a lot more important in the empire. And Christianity would be the focal point of Constantine's reign, and he would later be a saint in the church. Constantine heavily promoted Christianity and also held the First Council of Nicaea, which would be very important to Catholicism. And he also presided over the Donatist Schism, where many people were split down the middle on what to do with people who sacrificed, who were forced to under the Diocletianic persecution, but then came back to Christianity afterwards. And there was a split, should they be allowed back in the church or excommunicated. He would hold over this. He would be very important in the foundation of Christianity for the empire and its growing population. This would be a process that would go until Theodosius I, when he would finally outlaw any other religion. And this would be really the end of paganism. except for a brief resurgence under Julian the Apostate. So let's talk about one of Constantine's main legacies, which was the founding of Constantinople. The modern name is Istanbul, the capital of Turkey. This would be one of the greatest cities in the medieval ages and late antiquity. It had great defensive capabilities since later on the Theodosian walls would be added to it, one of the greatest walls of all time. And it would also be an important religious, cultural, and economic hub. It would be the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire. It would also be the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire and part of the Roman Empire until Theodosius I, and would be one of the best cities in the world and one of the highest populations for the medieval ages. This would also be one of the longest lasting cities and one of the most sieged cities, but would not fall due to its amazing walls. It would fall in 1453 to the Ottoman Turks, but that would be another 1100 years. He would also build Old St. Peter's Basilica and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which would be two great monuments and would be very famous. Really, ever since the 3rd century crisis began, emperors started appointing equestrians instead of senators. This would change under the reign of Constantine, when he would remove all equestrians from office and they would be promoted to the rank of senator. This would greatly devalue the equestrian class, since most of them were senators, and now most people in high office were senators instead of equestrians. This would greatly please the Senate, but they did not have much power anyway. The monetary reforms of Constantine would be a lot long-lasting than the reforms of Diocletian, include introducing the solidus. This would be the currency for the Roman Empire until the reign of Alexius I Komnenos, nearly 900 years later. Most of his other economic reforms were pretty short-lasting, but he did introduce a bronze coin called the centenalis, which would be pretty effective. But other than that, his monetary reforms were kind of okay. Let's talk about the execution of Crispus, Constantine's main heir, and also Constantine's wife, Fausta. Apparently, Crispus was trying to have relations with his mother, and for this, Constantine executed him along later with Fausta, as he thought Fausta was lying about Crispus. This would leave a gaping hole in the succession plan, and now the succession would be a lot more muddy, since there was not a clear heir. But after all, he eventually decided on the succession plans, where Constantine II and Constans, two of his sons, would inherit the west. Constantius would inherit part of the east, and another relative would inherit the east. These would set up a lot of civil wars in the future and would be bad. So let's talk about Constantine's death. In 337, Constantine would come up with the illness, and right before he died, he converted to Christianity by getting baptized. This was often seen as a way to go to heaven without any sin, because when you're baptized, you're supposed to remove any past sin, and since he converted, any sin he did before was eliminated. So let's talk about how we would rank Constantine and Licinius as emperors. I'd put Constantine as S tier. This will probably be the last emperor that I will put as S tier, and this will truly show a decline of Rome, as there won't be any emperors like this, at least in the West. And Licinius, I would put at C tier, as he was pretty good. He had a terrible position at first, but managed to control the whole Roman East. But he was still defeated by Constantine. So anyway, that's the end of the video. Like, subscribe, and goodbye. Have a good day.